So
exactly.
it does a lot of work. Anyway, we're going to kick things off here between two Hall of Famers here, Reid, Duke, and Gabriel Nassif. You can see that they've got pretty. I mean, in the coverage business, we don't like to use, we don't like to be too disparaging. We don't like to be rude or nasty. And obviously, I'd never be guilty of that. I'm very professional at all times. So we tend not to call things bad. Instead, we use the word interesting. And Corey, I'd be very happy to describe both of these opening hands as interesting hands.
Really? Because I was going to say that these are some pretty bad hands, Wow. That's what I was.
And that's really, Corey, a relative newcomer to coverage, only a couple of years under the belt. Me, a stalwart veteran, been here a long time, consummate professional. I know not to say these things, Corey.
You are a goat. Mate. So
wow. Yeah.
I'm learning every day from you, Riley. So, all right, those were some interesting cards. I think rightfully so.
There we go.
Rightfully so. They both took a mulligan here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Nassif might have kept this.
Yeah, Nassif, looking, I guess, at the copy of Edgewall Innkeeper, the Love Struck Beast, the fact that he can at least get some business going, maybe draw a card with the Beast if he just draws. I'm going to open things up with the Heart's Desire here. Hope to draw a land next turn.
Yeah, and the thing for Nassif's hand is you have 2 draws at any land and 1 draw at a mountain, and then this hand is just amazing. So there's the 1 land. So at least we got Innkeeper into Lovestruck Beast, and then you got to find a land. So that does give Nassif quite a few draws. So that first land was the really important one.
Problem here is, of course, that Duke. Nassif knows Duke's list, as well as he knows his own. They're literally exactly the same. So he knows that this draw from the Edgewall Innkeeper is not by no means guaranteed. Reid does have access to red mana. He does have the Bone Crusher Giant. We know. So maybe the Edgewall Innkeeper gets sandbagged here to a point that you can guarantee drawing a card off of it before they can remove it. But I don't know. This is a spot here. The old triple Forest, triple Bone Crusher Giant draw. Gabriel Nassif is not going to be happy with that.
Yeah, it's always the decision to run the Innkeeper out because you really want to cast Lovestruck Beast no matter what next turn. So it feels so bad if your opponent doesn't have Stomp, but then the reverse side of the coin, it feels so bad if they do. So it really just does come down to a guessing game. But they also have some Fire Prophecies in the deck too. So, 6 cards that kill this, that's quite a large amount. I like being conservative on this and wait to play Innkeeper until you get some immediate value. At least then it replaces itself if it gets destroyed right away.
And look, we'll probably see the Beast cast this turn here, irrespective of that. That's fine, because don't forget there are those 3 copies of Bone Crusher Giant, and even as early as next turn, Nassif can go Innkeeper, and then just make a 4/3, not even casting the Stomp, and immediately draw a card. And that's the sort of value we're looking for here. And this is great as well. Nassif's he's gonna be ecstatic about this. He's got the Stomp out of the hand. It's not trading with a full card, and he's taken out an answer from Duke's hand to that critical Edgewall Innkeeper that'll probably come down next turn.
Huge tempo swing there. Tempo swing and value swing right there. That minor decision on turn 2 to not play Innkeeper is going to yield so much value where Nassif is going to just get that card back right now. There's not going to be an immediate Stomp. And now, Reid has to top deck something to deal with it. And then if you're just stomping an Innkeeper, guess what? This 9 power, is going to stomp, your life total.
And here Nassif demonstrating he's more than happy to run out a 4/3, not going to cast the Stomp first, get that value, because he's going to replace itself. And even if the Innkeeper dies now, Nassif is fine with the way that this is has evolved. So Duke there, look, we're not going to sit here and call it a mistake. Duke made the best call that he could with the information he had available, but that Stomp on the 1/1 human token could prove to be quite costly here.
Exactly. And I mean, we just see Reid pick up another one here, and that is huge. But the major card here is the Great Henge. One of in each of their decks is just the most dominant card in the mirror match. So as much as, Nassif seemed like he came ahead on this exchange, the Great Henge just says, I don't care about that, and will really be, making the dynamic shift in this game.
Yeah, the tempo shifting back over to the way of Reid Duke here. But after this Great Henge coming down, of course, being able to power it a 2-drop with it and make that a 3/3 so it's immune to Stomp, really the perfect curve out for Duke here. Mammoth into Henge into Ooze, 2 3/3s, embarrassing the double Bone Crusher Giant in Nassif's hand here. So, even though that first sort of exchange definitely went the way of the French Hall of Famer here, the American right back at you here with the Great Henge followed up by that Ooze. So, we'll see. But the Akron War, not a bad one to have in this situation, although Nassif now has to look for ways to end this game nice and quick here.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. The Akroan War is great at just clearing the way for one nice attack, but then you just think, what are you doing next turn when Reid just drops 2 to 3 creatures with that great henge, refueling the hand? Then you look at your next turn and you're like, okay, I don't really have a great attack anymore. So you really just got to try to push your advantage as much as you can while that advantage still exists.
You can see they considered getting in there with the Edgewall Innkeeper. That would open up Stomp as an option if it were blocked to kill one of the 3/3s, but no, decides against it. Perhaps just wants to fire off one of these 4/3s to draw another card. In comes the team, and Duke here, more than happy to make some trades. There's a good reason for that, Corey.
Definitely. And it would open up the trade for the Stomp, but it would close the door for attacking with Lovestruck Beast because Gabriel Nassif would no longer have a 1/1. So I like the discipline, no attack with Innkeeper, even though more than likely it would go unblocked.
So we're going to see Edgewall Innkeeper into Bone Crusher Giant here. Refills the hand very nice. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Double Edgewall Innkeeper on duty here. Wow, it's a rowdy old night at the tavern. Yeah, that inn is going to be kept quite well after this. Yes, indeed. And it looks like choosing not to draw a card here with the 4/3, not to draw 2 cards, sorry, 3 cards even. Instead, it's Kazandu Mammoth. I like that. A nice disciplined play by Reid Duke. I mean, it's so tempting to just draw 3 cards right here, but with only 1 red mana, if you don't get a red mana, then you're not using all of your mana. And I think all these Gruul Adventure matchups come down to is being mana efficient and being, smart about your targets. But mana efficiency is very important here. Yeah, really surprising there to not, because that's a very, very tempting play to make there. You play an adventure creature into double Innkeeper, henge, draw 3. But here, Duke taking a different path. He can play a Forest, keep up Stomp or the Prophecy here. Yep. Yeah, a disciplined play there, and I think a play Reid would have chose to gone the other direction if he was a little bit more behind. But Reid recognizing he's driving this ship right now and definitely in a winning position. Ooh, okay, Shadow Skull smashing, but no land here to take out both those Edgewall Innkeepers. That would have been really tidy. And also now no 1/1 to attack with the Lovestruck Beast. Yeah, there's some interesting options here. I mean, a Akroan War plus the adventure side of Rimrock Knight here is pretty tempting at taking that Mammoth and really putting Reid Duke to the test of, do you want to block with these Innkeepers or take a little bit more damage? It would be really excellent if you could go a Akroan War, Boulder Dash of Rimrock Knight, and then a 1/1 as well, and you could attack with both creatures. But without that, it is a little bit more of a decision. So Akroan War is the play. We mentioned earlier that this, was a useful card in any mirror match, or not necessarily mirror match, any creature-based matchup here, and this certainly is that. I do like Gruul. We haven't seen a lot of it. It is definitely a deck that I like to play decks like this that just sort of naturally fit my sorcery speed, no think all attack play style, but they haven't. It hasn't been sort of at the top of the people's considerations recently. Yeah, 100%. It hasn't been too played lately. A lot of people have just been adding blue for Saw It Coming, Brazen Bar, kind of like what we saw from Javier Dominguez. That is a Gruul deck. It really is, but you just have that over-the-top aspect of Alrund's Epiphany and just access to more adventure creatures, but it plays similarly. Really? Do you think so? Because I kind of disagree in the way that list does look to go a lot bigger. It's not so all in on attacking. It has a much more controlling and interactive game plan, especially earlier on. It doesn't have that sort of brushfire elemental explosivity to it. And then with the counter spells, with the time walks, no Ember Cleaves to close the game out quickly. I don't know. I'd put that more on the mid-range spectrum rather than aggressive. True. I would agree with you on that. I guess it just plays similar as it still has that adventure package where you still see a lot of the same draws there, but it definitely does slow down, especially with like Sod Coming as a way to defend against Sultai Ultimatum. I think was the main reason why we got to Temur, because that over-the-top effect of just casting Ultimatum, you just die. You just die. Think the game. It's important to note that you can call a Gruul Adventures deck, you can call it an aggro deck because it is very aggressive, but it does have some pretty mid-range elements to it when it comes to its value engines. It's able to draw cards. It does have a good interactive suite as well. So I would characterize Gruul as an aggressive mid-range deck. And the observation you make, and you're absolutely spot on here, Corey, is in noting that mid-range engine of Gruul just doesn't hold up to Sultai anywhere near as well as Temur does. The trade-off you make, of course, is that Temur isn't as aggressive. So where do you want to land on that spectrum? That remains to be seen. These two here have decided that it is going to be Gruul for them. And I don't know, I back them. It's a good deck. It's a powerful deck. It's a consistent deck. And has a lot of different angles of attack.
And the one thing that I love about this that I just kind of realized as we started talking about this is why it really makes sense that they metagamed to choose Gruul. Sultai Ultimatum has been a deck that's really been losing favor lately. It's a lot of people are figuring out how to beat it, whether it's with a proactive element like Temur Adventures, followed up by some disputes, or mono white playing Reidane, mono red playing Rolling Vortex out of the sideboard. People have figured out how to beat the deck that was probably the most powerful deck at the start of this format. But now that people, are less high on Sultai Ultimatum, and we only saw 3 players playing it in the MPL metagame at least, Gruul makes a lot more sense because it is just a more streamlined deck. Embercleave is awesome, and I think it has a better matchup against Rogues decks with all these Oxes and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a good call. Interesting to see, look, to be honest, and it's not going to surprise anyone to hear this, we haven't seen a lot of innovation when it comes to standard deck lists recently. Wow, look at this, drawing so many cards with the Angel Innkeeper, just an absolute embarrassment of riches here for Duke.
And there's that Embercleave. This just could be over right here. Fabled Passage plus... Sorry to interrupt you there, Riley.
No, go ahead, because you may be right here.
Fabled Passage plus Embercleave on that Mammoth. I mean, that is just a 9/9 double striker here. Yeah, it's time. Get him in there.
Get them in there. I mean, they have to attack. The Akroan War makes certain of that here. So even though it's a sort of a chump attack with the 2/2 Innkeeper, by the look of things here, Gabe probably, look, he may be able to survive this attack, but even so is not going to be in good shape. His board is not in a good way here.
Yeah, and we're going to see a block here more than likely from Nassif that is just going to ignore Embercleave, because these are the kind of situations where you get into where you're just like, okay, it's almost relieving. You're just like, well, I cannot beat Embercleave, so that's out of my mind. They don't have that. And if they do, well, the game's over. Yeah, exactly. Just get it out of your head. All right, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 18. That is still 14. The Mammoth alone with the Mammoth block is going to be lethal. So the only way that Nassif can stay alive here is if you switch that Lovestruck Beast and Mammoth. But at this point, it is one of those things. Like, if you have it, it's over.
And, there'll be people in the peanut gallery looking at this and being like, oh, what an idiot, didn't play around Embercleave. But to come back to the point that you make, Corey, there's no point playing around a card that you are 0% to beat no matter what,
Exactly. So you make the best blocks possible to set you up in case Reid doesn't have it. But with the Great Henge coming down as early as turn 4 or turn 5 here, the game was almost sealed right there. Nassif had that 2 more turns or whatever to push through those final points of damage, and then the Henge will take over in a matchup like this.
Yes, indeed. And we see there, after an early exchange that definitely favoured Nassif, that was a very interesting a very interesting series of opening turns there. However, Duke, with the 1-off Great Henge, was able to manoeuvre himself into a position that was really incontestable for Nassif with the draw that he had. Yep. Things will change post-board, though. There's a couple of interesting options, of course, for both these players. 75-card mirror match here. A couple of interesting options for both players as we move into game number 2.
Here's one of the funniest things too, just to see how they sideboard, if they sideboard identically, because a team of this caliber, they write a sideboard guide. They talk about what we would sideboard in each match. But when you know that your opponent knows what you're going to sideboard, you usually want to switch it up. So we do see that a little bit here. Nassif only taking out 2 questing beasts where Reid takes all 3 out. Now, this could be a little bit of a play versus draw kind of aspect as well, but it could be a little bit of mind game saying, I know you're going to take out all 4, or I know you're going to take out 2 questing beasts, and you try to gain a little bit of an advantage with that known information.
Yeah, I wonder how this goes, really. You've been in pro testing teams. When you come to a tournament where you've got a deck and, your entire team's on the same 75, whatever, Do you, in those meetings before you go into you can see both players have sideboarded almost identically here. Do you go into those meetings and say, right, here's our plan if we get matched up against each other, and everyone's like, well, that's what I say I'm going to do, but then I'll actually like what's the dynamic there? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you gotta when you're on a testing team like this and you're playing for such high stakes, you go through every matchup, right? Gruul Adventures is probably not the most popular thing, but other people could bring it. So you do prepare for that matchup. But I even had a funny experience with my brother. We were in the top 4 of Grand Prix Denver a long time ago, and we were playing an exact 75 Temur Energy Mirror, and we took out Magma Sprays. That was our go-to thing. And then Brad, when he was on the draw, left him in against me and completely blew me out with it. And I'm like, how dare you, go away from our sideboard guide and beat me because of it? It's really a betrayal moment.
How dishonorable.
Yeah. It's so dishonorable.
What a knave.
Yeah,
I know. Such knavery. Oh, my goodness. This is what I'm wondering. Like, will Duke and Nassif have sat down and be like, right, this is our plan in the mirror. And then both of them are just like, no. No. I'm absolutely going to I'm going to play him like a violin here. I'm going to play him like a fiddle, and I'm going to bring in all sorts of other cards. I mean, you can see that both of them broadly sideboarded similarly, with the cards that were coming out being brought in. A couple of differences there, but I don't know. How do you approach this?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a lot different in a open pro event where you could play against hundreds of people. They knew that they're in a pod of 8 together. So the possibilities of them playing were pretty high. They might play even in the next pod, looking forward for tomorrow for standard. So they had it in their mind. But for the majority, they want to beat the other players, and they'll be okay if they play against each other and win or lose. They're still teammates.
Yeah, I guess it's different, in a smaller tournament like this where you've got a higher chance of being paired against someone. It's always in the back of your minds that it could happen. So I guess it's not a surprise for anyone. Yeah, still tough position to be in, of course, playing against a teammate and a friend. Yep. And that's where these two find themselves. I've certainly not the first time they played against each other, and it won't be the last. So a double Love Struck Beast here with Heart's Desire popping out 2 1/1s. And it looks like we're going to have at least one of them bite the dust here with a Stomp. Duke proving to be very willing, Corey, to spend his interaction early on these little 1/1 tokens.
Yep, and also really willing to keep a hand with Bone Crusher Giant, putting a high equity on that card, because Reid Duke kept a hand with quite a lot of lands, but it did have Bone Crusher. And when you can just go Stomp into Bone Crusher, no matter what, you have turn 2, turn 3, all set up. It just shows how great that card is in Standard right now in these creature matchups.
Bone Crusher really just a premium card. It's something that's seen so much play in Standard. Just an absolute workhorse. It's not a flashy end game card like Sultai Ultimatum or Embercleave or something like that. Yep. It is just an absolute workhorse. This card picks off a creature, comes down as a legitimate ultimately beatable, but a very legitimate threat, and just the perfect inclusion in decks of all kinds. I think it's one of, if not the most played card in Standard, actually.
I would think so. And with Strixhaven coming out too, I do not think that is going to change. That card is just so powerful right now. And of course, you play against Sultai Ultimatum. It's not going to be great, but it is still good enough as just a 4/3.
That's right. Like, what's the floor on this card? It's an overpriced shock, sure, but you're also getting a body that they have to deal with. It's a 4/3. Like, it'll kill you in a couple of hits if you don't pay it respect. Yeah, it dies to most things, a Wrath, it dies to a removal spell. It'll ding you on the way out.
Yeah.
Bone Crusher Giant, one of the unsung heroes of. I'm going to look up actually its play rate and see how played it is, because I mean my sort of shot from the hip here is that it is the most played card in Standard, and I am wrong. Would you like to guess the most card played in Standard? This is of course including sideboards. There's a little clue for you.
Ooh, that's a clue, huh? Okay, most played card including sideboard.
Bone Crusher Giant number 2 behind one card that finds its way into 54% of decks according to
I'm going to guess Ox of Agonis.
Bow, that's number 7. It is Mystical Dispute.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that is pretty fair. Any blue deck I play, I'm putting Mystical Dispute in my sideboard because it is just so good against Into the Story and Emergent Ultimatum. Like, all right.
Yep.
7,
it's
not
close.
bad.
Yep, it's close. Bone Crusher Giant in 47% of decks, Negate in 44 of them. It's It is really an absolute pillar of the format, Bone Crusher Giant. Double Lovestruck Beast getting in now. Of course, that 1/1 human that was left sticking around enables the attack for 10. And both players here looking like they've got decent options as the game continues. The Crown War Questing Beast here for Reid Duke. In addition to that, Shadow Skull Smashing, which might do some work in future turns. Nassif on Ooze, Dragonfire, Ox. And we're going to see some trades here, Corey. Unsurprising, both players probably going to be satisfied with this, just trading off creatures, keeping the board relatively at parity.
It'll be interesting if Gabriel Nassif fires off this Scorching Dragonfire on, let's say, the 1/1. You'd want to do it on the 1/1 versus the Bone Crusher Giant just to avoid 2 damage. But then that does allow you to keep one of the Lovestruck Beast. But it does take away from playing, Scavenging Ooze and having a bunch of green available. I would think we're still going to see Scorching Dragonfire to keep your card around, but that does open the door for Reid Duke to just a Crow and War Lovestruck Beast or something like that. So there's a lot of things to be thinking about when you're keeping one of your cards alive here because your opponent can just take it.
We may see a follow-up with the Scavenging Ooze here. The Fabled Passage being played indicates that Nassif wants to play the Ooze and immediately eat something out of the yard with it. Goes and gets a forest.
Yeah, Nassif recognizing how good Stomp is just as much as we have been in the booth. Avoiding your Scavenging Ooze from getting stomped is huge here because that card really can just run away from the game. Not only because it gets large, but we see Ox still in the deck for Gabriel Nassif. I wouldn't be shocked if, Reid left some in as well. It's a card when you're trading resources this often, if you ever get to escape it and just get 3 extra cards or even just playing it, to, discard 1 card, draw 3, for instance. It's a very powerful card in this matchup.
Yeah, and, we're going to see any spare green mana pumped into that Ooze from Nassif here just to keep the escape cost more or less unreachable for Duke. Duke, on the other hand, he's going to get in the front foot. He's going to dance down the wicket. In comes, wow, look at that. The Questing Beast coming in, attacking. Did you see a little arrow there on its way down to the battlefield? That animation hadn't finished before it had done its damage.
Yes. That's one thing. Questing Beast attacked even before you get to your combat, I feel.
Like
that card's always getting
turbo slug, exactly, yeah. A Masked Vandal here for Nassif. Useful card in this matchup. Takes out things like the Crow War, I was going to say Embercleave, but I mean, by the time it deals with an Embercleave, the damage is probably already done. But critically as well, the Great Henge.
That's the big one. And I'm looking at the deck list right now. The one thing that's really interesting to me is to not even see a second Great Henge in the sideboard. That card is just so powerful. One of the most powerful cards in Standard. I'm interested that they didn't even want another one. But it makes sense that it's only really strong against Mono Red, I would say Mono White, and Gruul. Temur Adventures being able to Petty Theft, bounce, as well as Sultai Ultimatum being able to destroy it, and Dimir Rogues being able to counter it pretty easily. Makes sense why you wouldn't want a ton of them.
It's really clunky sometimes, man. Like, even if you play it on turn 4 and Sultai's just untaps, like, sure, bind the old gods, see you later. You didn't even draw a card off it or whatever. It just feels so bad. Yeah, exactly. It feels terrible. So I can see why they made the choice. And look, it looks to be a good one, honestly. Like, obviously you want more copies of it in this matchup, but what was it? 1 mono red deck? 0 mono white decks? Like, I think they made the right call there.
I think so. I love that Nassif is giving that card a read. Just something that they probably last minute added. Like, all right, we'll play 1 of Perforos Intervention. Why not?
Yeah, Perforos' Intervention, for those of you who don't know, makes an X1 trampling hasty creature, an elemental, that has to be sacrificed at the next end step. So kind of like a weird ball lightning. And the other mode deals damage to a creature or planeswalker, just a straight up. Not a fireball. What is it, like Devil's Play without flashback?
Yeah, I guess that can't go upstairs. It's a very interesting design and a card I have not seen play in a long time.
No, certainly not one of the more
ever.
Cards. Ever?
Or ever. I don't know if anyone's ever cast that against me.
I got absolutely wrecked by a Devil's Play, and I was playing Cube on Arena. Cube's on Arena at the moment, and I was having a great time. Stabilized, fantastic, no worries. They play Double Vision. I'm like, all right, mate, okay, nice 5 mana, do nothing enchantment. Don't worry about it. I'm on like 18, right? Next turn, untap, copy Devil's Play for 9. Am I right? Okay. All right.
Oh, okay. This is how it's going to be, huh?
They just wanted it more, Corey. I mean, what can you do, man? They just wanted it more. Here's Perforos's intervention.
Did. And who wants it more right now? Looks like Gabriel Nassif. This is just lethal here.
Wow, look at this.
Bang.
Yeah, getting straight in there with the 5/1 elemental token in addition to that Love Struck Beast. Now, usually we see Edgewall Innkeeper come down, draw a bunch of cards, start getting some value. But no. Here, instead, it was just an enabler here for the 5/5 to get across and deal the lethal points of damage in addition to that elemental. Not a bad finish there for Gabe.
This is really why Magic the Gathering is the greatest game of all time. I did not expect that I was going to say, yep, and that's Perfio's intervention off the top for the win from Gabriel Nassif. A sentence I just did not expect to hear.
No, not today.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, Corey, get things set up, and we'll be back in just a moment with game number 3. We've got a couple of things sorted on the back end, so stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment with game number 3. Welcome back and thanks for your patience here as we continue our coverage of this league weekend. Right tonight in the booth with Corey Baumeister. Great to have your company. Thanks for joining us around the world, wherever you are. And we're going to get into game number 3 between Gabriel Nassif and Reid Duke, these two Hall of Famers going at it here, both of them members of Team Channel Fireball. And they're playing a 75-card mirror match for those just joining us. They're currently at 1-1, Corey.
Yep, impressive stuff. And I was wondering if we were going to see a sideboard change at all where, let's say, they switched essentially, where there would only be 2 questing beasts taken out with play draw in mind, but nope, just sticks to Reid sticks to his guns and keeps it the same. So they must have just had a difference of opinion on how to sideboard in the mirror.
Yep, looks like it.
Or mind games, of course, like we were talking about. Gaming your good buddy.
Reid Duke is known as one of the most duplicitous and chicanerous players on the professional circuit.
Yeah,
he really is. I mean, Corey might sit there and just lie to your face, revered viewer, and say that Reid is generally upheld as a bastion of fairness and honesty, and has a wonderful reputation. But don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Reid is a villain of the highest order.
That's my main MO, is just to lie to people's faces. How did you know? How did you get my
character
down?
I'm starting more beefs. Like, I've come out swinging at Gabe, and now I'm like trying to take down. Like, why go after Reid Duke? Like, he's Mr. Magic. Yeah. Why would you ever? I'm just not making good tactical decisions today. Anyway, in comes the 1-1 here, as we see a Fire Prophecy deal with the Edgewall Innkeeper from Gabriel, who picks up a copy of Fire Prophecy himself. His hand is looking okay. He's not going to play out this ooze, though, maybe wanting to, again, protect it from Stomp. We saw it played as effectively as not as a 3-drop, but played for 3 mana, making it as a 2-2 and then immediately eating something out of the bin. So just holding up Fire Prophecy, and that's going to take out something useful like the Kazandu Mammoth.
And game 1, we saw Nassif really just make the correct play. It's all in hindsight. It's all based on what your opponent has in hand. But holding that Innkeeper was really correct last time. And it turns out, just with perfect information that we all have right now, Scavenging Ooze there, it would have been better to play it unless you really value holding up Fire Prophecy. But it did have the coast clear. But once again, Nassif is going to get paid off by a Mammoth instead of a Love Struck Beast here, if Reid does go for that, that's a brutal one.
And this is the thing. This is why Nassif held up the Fire Prophecy, because at the very, very worst for him, this turn would involve him getting rid of the 1/1 and removing the ability for that Love Struck Beast to attack. So if that's the flaw of your play, it makes a lot of sense, whereas if the flaw of your play by playing Scavenging Ooze is like you get blown out by a Stomp when you didn't have to because you could just play it a turn later, it'd be fine. This is great play. It's really high-level stuff from Gabriel Nassif, who is one of those players, as so many high-level players are, who is able to keep multiple lines of play concurrently in his head. It's a skill that I've always struggled with. It's something that's put a ceiling on my ability as a Magic player, and something that I really admire, in many pros, people like Reid, people like Gabe, even, to a much lesser extent, people like you, Corey.
Much less, yeah, absolutely.
But, people who are able to sort of crystallize a game state and be like, okay, well, if I do this and they do this, then I'll do this, right? But if I do this and they do that, then I'll do this instead. It's sort of like these branching decision trees. People can hold 2, 4, 16, 32 of them in their head at the same time. And it's just incredible. That's what separates the good players from the great.
100%. And just being able to adjust your play and not get tunnel vision, saying okay, if they do this, I want to do this, but then be like, well, it's changed. I've drawn this now, really being able to adjust your state of mind. And these two players, between them, they have won over $1 million playing Magic the Gathering, which is just astronomical to me, but it shows just the discipline and the great state of mind, the great thought process that they have when it comes to Magic the Gathering.
Oh, and between the two of them, you think of the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of gameplay that Gabriel Nassif has slogged through, and then probably slightly less, a fair bit less for Reid Duke. This is something that I've said about Gabe. That's probably a fair bit. It's something I've said about Gabe for a long time. He's one of those players that he can lean back on a wealth of experience. This is a serious question. I know we all love to make fun of Gabe for how slow he plays, but here's a serious question for you, the viewer at home. Is there a player who has played more hours of Magic the Gathering? I'm not saying has played the most games, but who has played the most hours of Magic the Gathering? Is it Gabriel Nassif?
I don't know. I was just going to say, Reid plays a ton of Magic because his family is really involved in Magic as well. I have this same kind of thing with Brad. Me and him played so much Magic together because it was our bonding moments, But Reid Duke, Ian, and Logan Nettles. And if anybody has played more Magic, I got to say it's Logan Nettles. That man is a workhorse when it comes to playing the game. And it would probably be why Reid and Logan got to where they are, Ian as well, being in play design. But Gabriel Nassif, especially with his day job being the stream, has to just have an astronomical amount of Magic.
Yeah, just a huge number of hours logged playing Magic. Yeah, absolutely. They say it takes 10,000 hours to make someone a master.
Yeah.
Well, they say that. I don't know if they actually do say it or not.
I was going to say, you've probably played about 10,000 hours of Magic, and the mastery, I tune into your stream quite a bit, man. I'm a sub. I haven't seen that part yet.
Yeah, Corey, listen, mate, if you could just stay a bit more focused on the match that we're watching here, mate, that'd be really appreciated, all right?
Gotcha.
Instead of the irrelevant tangents about, this person's play skill or that colleague's ability with the game, Corey?
Yeah, because I know one thing about Mr. Riley Knight, going off on a tangent is one thing we do not stand for.
No. Laser-like focus on every game. It's funny, actually, to talk about lasers. It reminds me of this time. So one time I went, hang on. What are we doing here? A Crowan War might come down here. The problem with the Crowan War is you can see Nassif here has kept up. He didn't play the Heart's Desire from the Lovestruck Beast in order to keep open that Thrashing Brontodon activation. Thrashy B, a lot better than Masked Vandal in this situation, not only as a creature that attacks and blocks, but also a great answer to the Crowan War, to Embercleave. A really useful body here.
Yeah, Thrashing Brontodon is a card that we have started to see a lot less, right? Because you don't, in the Temur deck, which is the only other really, really strong adventure deck we see right now, we've seen that mana base just be a nightmare. People like Javier Dominguez can guide in such a way that they're able to cast their spells, with expertise. But Thrashing Brontodon, adding another double green card into there with a double blue card, double red card with Ox, it's just tough on the mana base, so we don't see it a lot there.
No, very true. I mean, already the team of mana base kind of bending over backwards in order to make it work. And
Yeah.
Sultai's in a similar position. Although I don't know that Sultai wants a Thrashing Brontodon, to be honest. It's not the sort of deck that contests the board in the same way. But look,
yeah, you got Binding in Sultai. Binding just does it all. Binding's old gods. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, a 3-mana 3/4, while it's a decent rate, it's not the sort of game plan that Sultai is looking to execute here. Lovestruck Beast comes down now as a 5/5. Noah Crow and War into this obvious disenchant. And so the other useful thing here about Nassif leaving up that 1 mana is it's not going to be wasted. He can use the Scavenging Ooze to munch something out of Duke's graveyard and thereby keep the Ox escape cost.
And I'm not 100% sure that Nassif has a creature in graveyard, but if he did, this was a really interesting play. Nassif decided to not eat anything at end step. What's going on there? Because just in case of Fire Prophecy, right? Like, no point in throwing away your Scavenging Ooze to that removal spell. So good play if there's a creature in the graveyard. If not, it really didn't matter. And then I think Nassif would have just ate a card anyways. Yep. So that leads me to believe there was a creature in Nassif's graveyard. But of course, we cannot see that right now.
No. Okay.
Uh-oh. Intervention is back.
All right. Peripheral's Intervention. It won the game for Nassif. Can it do it again?
Not as good now when there's a 1/1 to block, admittedly. But
that has trample.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay.
That is trample.
Not bad. Not bad.
So, and you're sacrificing at the end step as well. So it doesn't matter too much.
Another land for Reid here is the really brutal aspect here. Reid knows that this Akroan War is no good with this Thrashing Brontodon. It will be 4 mana, kill target Thrashing Brontodon. Whenever this actually lands, and without another play, you got to think advantage bar heading to Gabriel Nassif here.
Looks like it, particularly considering that Ox of Agonis, which is going to be able to refill Nassif's hand before too much longer. Now, there are some attacks available here for Duke, and he's going to send both of his 5/5s in. But Nassif's got the blocks. This is not the end of the world here for the Frenchman.
So I think what this really is incentivizing, Reid's just like, put that Brontodon in front of something, put that Brontodon in front of something, please, please, please. So you can get rid of that and then Akroan War something. But Nassif is not in the market to do that so far. And that makes sense. With your life total being this high right now, it seems reasonable. But think about this. What if Ember... Oh, no, we got the Brontodon for Ember Cleave. I was going to say that would threaten lethal. But no, we got it all wrapped up here for Nassif so far.
And it makes sense. You could double block, get rid of that beast, whatever. But I think Nassif recognizes that the utility of both Thrashy Bee and the Scavenging Ooze here is really useful. Another Ox here. Not a great draw, the second Ox, to be honest, because obviously as soon as you cast the first, you lose the second. So a bit of a whiffsky there for Nassif. Be interested to see what he does. We're going to see another Perforos's Intervention here. This is X equals 4, so not great.
Yeah, not great, but it's definitely still solid. And I want to point out right now and remind everyone that Nassif is tied for first right now. If we pick up a win from Nassif, he could easily be leading Pod A right now, which nobody's done except Paulo for, I feel like, multiple years. 3-4 years, it seems.
3 or 4 years, a couple of centuries at least. Intervention is going to deal with the Lovestruck Beast. It's a good way to take the pressure down for Nassif.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the 5/5. And this opens the door for an attack here. We're going to see both of these creatures come in, keeping back the Edgewall Innkeeper on defense. And then I imagine, Corey, we're going to move to the next stage of the game, which is just getting some value off of these Ox of Agonis here.
Yeah, exactly. And no value right now for Reid. This is a big draw and another land. Oh, wow. That is so tilting if you're a Reid Duke here. He was in a good position, or at least a very even position, and then just 2 lands in a row at this key spot is just so defeating.
Top of the library, really not treating him well. If Nassif draws a land, he's ecstatic about it because he can just play his Ox and draw 3 more cards after discarding the other one. So, yeah, really, really not looking good for Duke here, whose life total is under siege. He is really facing a tremendous amount of pressure that's only going to get worse as the game goes on now.
Yeah, and we got so much value from Gabriel Nassif with these 2 Oxes, and you're 100% right. They don't work too well together, but, putting one of them into the graveyard and being able to escape it later is not nothing. But just being able to, play Kazandu Valley, play Ox, refill your hand, seems really good right now in the face of Reid, well, doing nothing. Reid's being very patient with that Akroan War, just looking for any way to deal with Thrashing Brontodon first, and then pick up a creature to at least lead to a nice 2-for-1 situation. But we're going to be getting close to just having to play Akroan War as a removal spell on Thrashing Brontodon.
Yeah, and here we're not going to see the Ox of Agonis after all. It's going to be a Kazandu Mammoth instead.
I like this too because Ox of Agonis will likely find Gabriel Nassif a land next turn, maybe even a Fabled Passage if we're really getting lucky, and just another land. What? That's just not nice. Reid will have to have a conversation with the top of his deck after this.
Yeah, it's really not treating him too well. We're going to see the Akroan War come down, remove the Thrashing Brontodon. But even so, you'd think with the massive Scavenging Ooze, with the Kazandu Mammoth, probably going to be proc next turn, whether it's with a land, Fabled Passage, what have you. I think Reid is really staring down the barrel of it here, and I think he's going to have to pack him up.
Yeah, looks like dead to a land. If my calculations are right, that 1/1 can block the Scavenging Ooze. Ox of Agonis finds a land, and then Mammoth would be 5. Edgewall Innkeeper would be that extra point. And even if you don't hit a land, you just got 3 spells. So it's going to be a real tough one here for me.
It's like, oh no, I didn't draw a land. Instead, I drew business. Oh,
yeah,
how terrible.
All the gas.
I mean, if he draws the 3rd Ox, that's pretty bad. I think he brought 2 in. So that is pretty bad if he draws another Oxen. But apart from that, Nassif is drawing live here. So Thrashing Brontodon in response means that the Akroan War, the ability actually never, it resolves, but it never change. It means the ooze never changes hands. Not that that's super relevant here. And now another land, putting probably another land on the bottom. There's the land, and that is that. Gabriel Nassif is going to win here, but with 2 lethal 5-power creatures, Reid Duke with nothing left to do than say good game and pack him up. An unfortunate bounce there for Reid Duke, Corey. It has to be said. An unfortunate way for him to end that game there, because really things just not coming together for him at the end of the day.
Yeah, bad way to start Pod A, being down 2 matches there, but a great way to start Pod A if you're a Gabriel Nassif fan, being up 2-0 and the chance to take what I thought was just Paulo's spot. I thought he was just auto put into 1 because he is so respected by many players as the best player in the world. I thought he was just forced into that. But apparently, somebody else can actually take it. It's news to me.
They're printing the table cards for Worlds like at a wedding, and they're like already typesetting PVs. And they're like, oh, hang on, don't send that off to the printer yet. It's like, what are you talking about? It's PV, man. It's safe. Don't worry about it.
They sent it before the season started.
That's Gabriel Nassif's music. He's coming in for it. Anyway, we've got more Magic to show you, my friends. We're getting things sorted out. We may be taking a quick break here. But before that, we may be able to actually jump into our backup match instead and have a look at what else went on in round number 1. And there he is, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Paulo Vitor Rosa. Speak of the Brazilian superstar, and yea, verily shall he appear. And he's playing off against another Portuguese speaker in the form of Marcio Carvalho. The the matchup here, Sultai Ultimatum versus Temur Adventures. And as you can see, their PV sitting in spot number 1. We'll see if that changes after this. Let's head down to the feature match area after a quick break, my friends. We'll be back with more Magic after this. Welcome back to live coverage of the Strixhaven League weekend. So good to have your company right tonight, joined by Corey Barmeister. And we've got another match for your viewing pleasure, my friends. Marcio Carvalho facing off against Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa. What's the story with these two? Corey, how's the weekend gone so far?
Well, so far they have both started off on a loss, so not the way they want to be starting. And I know Paulo was feeling pretty uneasy going into this match. You know, even the GOAT is nervous before a big tournament. That makes me feel better because I'm a nervous wreck whenever I play. But he was really worried about his chances here playing Sultai Ultimatum. Sultai Ultimatum, like we've been saying before, is one of these decks that if people want to beat it, they can. But if people forget about it, it's really rough, you know?
Right.
So we'll see. This matchup was not my favorite when I play Sultai Ultimatum. This is my favorite deck in the format, but it is really rough when they can present a lot of pressure with these adventure creatures, Goldspan Dragon, and then back it up with cards like Mystical Dispute, which Marcio has access to all 4 of them in his 75.
Well, let's have a look here at the Sultai Ultimatum list. You can see here it's undergone a fair few changes since its inception. I played it a bunch on my stream months ago, and it was running 3 copies of Valky and no copies of Pelucranos or Elder Gargaroth, that sort of thing. But you can see it has undergone quite a transformation now, with stuff like Shadow's Verdict becoming industry standard. Pelucranos, Elder Gargaroth now, quite common inclusions. Valky down to just 1 copy there, and Alrund's Epiphany. It's been hovering between 1 and 3 copies, settled on 2 now for the reigning world champion here. But not too many surprises in this list, honestly, Corey. Not too many innovations. A Seeker's Chariot, a more recent introduction as well, but by now, standard technology.
Yeah, this is pretty much stock from what Sifka, Brad Nelson, and company played at the Keldheim Championship. I really love the 2 Pelucranos, you know, against Rogues, which I would have picked to probably be the most played deck, and I know it was tied for first. Having that card really shapes your game 1 percentages, and it's still just a very good card against aggro decks. So I like having 2. I think it's really, really good.
Well, we're going to jump into the match as soon as things are ready to go here. We can have a look at Marcio's deck before we do so, however. Of course, this is one of the other biggest decks in the format in the form of Temur Adventures. This is a list, Corey, that you compared to the Gruul deck, the Gruul Adventures list. It's got that Adventures sort of package, the beast, the giant, the innkeeper, the mammoth, but it is playing blue for principally some interactive cards, including some counterspells here.
Yep, the counterspells, Mystical Disputes, saw it coming, are going to be insane here, especially game 1. Game 1 is so rough when the Sultai Ultimatum deck doesn't have a ton of interaction to fight back against these disputes. It's a scary one. And then the tides get to be a little bit more even when you can bring into some disputes as well. But yeah, game 1 tends to be a little rough. I want to point some attention to that Shadow Sphere in the main. I really like that card. Just if you ever draw that and strap it up to a Love-Struck Beast against mono red or something, like lights out. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the card's really good. It's a one of that you can really benefit from having. It was very, very popular as an inclusion in remember the old Temur decks, the old Temur Adventures decks that have the wish board. Often it would be the Desperation Shadow Spear. You know, you'd pop that on a Beanstalk Giant, and that that'd get you out of trouble. But here, you really do get a lot of percentage points by having stuff like Shadow Spear in the main deck, so you can see why Carvalho's got it there. Anyway, we're going to be able to jump into this match here and see how things pan out between these 2 superstars of the game, of course. Marcio Carvalho still with a lot left to prove. He's still got that hunger. Whereas Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa, I think it's fair to say, has done just about every with the new card bearing his likeness, the so-called invitational card, as we tend to call them, based on the old invitational tournament, although these days a World Championship card. I don't really think there's anything left for him to achieve, right? Like, he's kind of 100% at Magic the Gathering.
I don't know. He's never won the overall number of league weekends. He's never taken first place in league weekends over the total course of a season because, well, nobody has, right? Like that's the only thing.
Yeah, but I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? Like, this is like, if we're playing like Assassin's Creed, he went around and collected all the feathers. You can't blame him for not having done all the collection quests in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's not even out yet, but he's on his way to doing it. This is a man who really has just done more or less everything there is to do in the game.
Yeah.
And is widely considered one of the greatest of all time.
I mean, when are we getting to the point where it's just he is the greatest? Like we got to be getting there close.
I will say that. I will say that Paulo is the greatest of all time, but that comes with the caveat that I wasn't around for Finkel and Buddha. I didn't play Magic at that point. I was too busy giving all the nerds at my school wedgies and stealing their lunch money. I hadn't been accepted into the fold myself.
I see. That's something you probably don't want to admit there, bud.
Well, I probably don't want to admit my deep dark past as a wannabe jock in high school that went around
I mean,
picking all the nerds.
You honestly picked on me severely yesterday on Twitter. I saw that April Fool's video of yours, and you got me so good.
I got you so good. That's it. Yeah, give me your lunch money, nerd. See you later. I'm going to the cafeteria.
You digitally took all my lunch money, but I laughed so hard that I had to forgive you. At least you're a funny bully, right?
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I try to inject some humor whenever I'm being a toxic member of the Magic community. What is this conversation? Oh, my goodness. Here's Pelucranos now. There's the answer for Carvalho in the form of saw it coming. Let's see if he saw this particular monster coming here. Carvalho a little behind the 8-ball here. No further lands for him. And Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa are in the same position were it not for that cultivate. But look at this. Mystical Dispute means that Poly K going to come down after all.
Yeah, and now we look at Marcio Carvalho and then just this Temur deck in general. Monty brings up just the greatest point about this deck. When you don't have Ketria Triome, wow, does this deck look like a different deck? And I mean, especially being on 3 lands, that makes it pretty awkward as well. But just 3 lands that produce 1 color when you have a couple of double red spells, some green 1-drops, and a blue counterspell you want to play, it just gets really awkward.
I've talked to people about this list and their perspectives on it and that sort of stuff. And many people have brought up the same problem, that the mana is just atrocious. It's just so bad. And, you look at it, it can't be that bad, right? Like 3 colors is doable in standard. We've got the pathways, we've got the triumphs, it's all good. But no, think again, because, the mana is mana's real tricky sometimes. And this is emblematic of that here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm pretty interested here. Paulo did have the option to just play Elder Gargaroth here and kind of let this happen, let the Innkeeper live. And there's not a ton of ways that Marcio can just deal with the Gargaroth. We have like Brazen Borrowers to bounce it, which is a good tempo swing, but just valuing the card advantage that Innkeeper allows so highly that saying, eventually I'll cast this Gargaroth. Marcio's stuck on lands. Let's just kill this annoying Innkeeper while we can.
Now, pretty obvious Mystical Dispute here, or pretty obvious counterspell. Well, actual just Mystical Dispute from Carvalho here, who chose not to play the Bone Crusher Giant. We're probably going to see Paulo be very circumspect about playing into this card, given that it was so clearly signposted. Otherwise, you would just slam the 4-3. But Carvalho obviously concerned about a potential ultimatum here, so he's going to keep up that piece of counter magic.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Paulo wants to cast anything. There's some thought to just jamming Gargaroth, just saying that this Mystical Dispute is going to get some of my big spells anyways. But the one thing that I'm noticing now is we just don't have Ultimatum mana. We're missing a black source. So that's a big deal. I like Paulo just being conservative here, buying Yorion, leaving up Heartless Act, which pretty likely he will get a target. And Paulo's really avoiding the worst case scenario where Marcio would go Goldspan or counter Elder Gargaroth into Goldspan Dragon into hold up counterspell for Ultimatum. So to avoid that sequence, this was a great play.
Heartless Act on the Goldspan Dragon. No response there from Carvalho, of course. That Mystical Dispute costs 3. And now we're back to PV, who is firmly in control of this game. He can play an Elder Gargaroth. He can even just hard cast an Ulran's Epiphany here. But it's going to be Big Garg here by the look of things. Any reason not to cast the Epiphany?
Mystical Dispute. Yep. Elder Gargaroth dodges every counter
there's the treasure.
Spell.
The treasure token. Yep. Sorry, of course. The treasure token is definitely live. Sorry, excuse me, I missed that one.
Definitely. First thing you've ever missed in the booth, right?
It's the first thing we're witnessing history here. It's the first time I've ever made a mistake in the booth here. We're going to see a Juari Disruption though. This can be paid for by that Goldspan Dragon. This can be paid for by that treasure token. They didn't miss it a second time, Corey.
You got it. Home run. Yeah, the Gargaroth play there was just awesome because the only counter spells that are available for Marcio for game 1 are Mystical Dispute, Saw It Coming. And without Saw It Coming, I guess we only had 1 mana anyways, but it dodges both of those there. So Gargaroth, definitely the slam dunk play.
And so the The Joy disruption there, though it didn't prevent the dragon from entering the battlefield, what it did prevent is from ramping Carvalho enormously by juicing up that treasure token. So
Paulo is just trying to channel, give me a black source, give me a black source. The coast is clear if we get it here. Oh!
And instead finds a green-blue land. So here we can see now another attack. This is going to put Carvalho down to 3.
And now we got a nice, interesting line. We got Gargaroth or Yorion available. The one benefit from Yorion here is you get to kind of reset that Polychronos' power and toughness by blinking it, creating a 6/6. Then it can pick off Goldspan Dragon. And the main box that either one of them checks here is the fact that it has 5 toughness and reach or flying to put that Goldspan Dragon in check. So I like this. Ooh, and yeah, this is even better. What Paulo was lining up there is he put a stop on his end step. So at end step, Polychronos is going to come back in as a 6-drop. Those Wolf Willow Havens were going to exit. You put both of them on Temple of Malady, the green-black temple, and then just fight before Marcio can even untap. Game over.
Yeah. That was the reason for the concession there. Carvalho saw that Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa more or less had it. Exactly there. And a very light touch for both of these two with sideboarding. Only 4 cards switching out. You can see Coma and Eliminate on the way in exchange for Elspeth's Nightmare and a Seeker's Chariot. A Seeker's Chariot generally best in aggressive matchups.
Yeah.
On the other side, an extra copy of Mystical Dispute and Saw It Coming. Very useful against Sultai Ultimatum. Emergent Ultimatum, I should say. And the Clothis here as well, coming in for Shadow Spear. Again, a card that you want against aggressive decks. And the rather clunky Great Henge. We talked about the fact that Great Henge isn't great in this matchup. Talk to us a little bit about Carvalho's sideboarding here, Corey.
Carvalho's sideboard makes a lot of sense. Shadow Sphere is for aggressive decks. The Great Henge is definitely for aggressive decks as well. So I think it's more a demand of needing to take those cards out. They're just not great in this matchup. I could see living in like 1 Great Henge, but if you ever draw a second one, it's pretty bad. And then Dispute, Saw It Coming, both answers to Emergent Ultimatum. And Clothis, people would normally think maybe this card is not that good. It's just pinging for 2 when Sultai Ultimatum's #1 game plan is to just go well and above over the top of your opponent. But it just the way it plays out, it is so tough to deal with, where if Marcio can get into this control player game plan where it just lands Colossus on 3 and then basically says, I'm going to play creatures and stuff as long as Paulo cannot cast Emergent Ultimatum, it's really tough to win from the Sultai side because that damage from Clothis really adds up quickly.
Yeah, sure. All right. Yeah. Okay. And I guess it can also ramp you as well if you get a Fable Passage or something like that. You can cast as a Goldspan Dragon a turn ahead of time. Yeah. All right. I see it. That's exactly the question I wanted to ask, really, was like, why the Clothis? But it does have a weird kind of utility that is a little hidden from view. Carvalho, considering a mulligan on this hand, it looks defensible, but not spectacular.
Yeah, and we're already mulligan 1, so this is a 6. So I think you have to keep this. He's probably just thinking what to put back. But I remember being on stream playing Sultai Ultimatum. My opponent plays Clothis. I'm like, yeah, not afraid of that one. And then 5 turns later, I'm at 4. They have 2 cards, 2 targets to finish me off. And I'm like, okay, well, this card actually seems insane.
Can really do some work, apparently. Fable Passive now opening up the account for Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa.
Speak of the devil, here is Clothis.
And there she is off the top. Okay. Now, Bone Crusher Giant, not great in this matchup. Obviously, keeping Stomp up on turn 2 can be very, very good in many situations. But here, it's not going to do a whole lot.
Hey, I mean, if that Velky comes down, boom,
Bang, gone. You got See you later.
Out of here, to the graveyard.
Yeah, catch you, Versace. That's it, mate. All right, 2 damage going upstairs instead. Just an overpriced shock here.
Interesting here. Dwari Disruption, you don't really care about the 2 damage, but caring about the front side is interesting. And, I think we're going to see it going for Clothis because only Dwari Disruption counters it.
Yep.
And, we got it. Can you pay 1, Marcio? I think not.
Kablam. Look at that. Yep, held on to it. Huge. Didn't want to counter the Stomp. Held it for the key card that was Clothis, apparently. And PV's paid off handsomely for that. I mean, look, he's got other answers to Bone Crusher Giant. He'll take 2. He'll take another 2 with Heartless Act to kill it. He doesn't care. Clean it up with an Extinction Event. Extinction Event, very, very good against Temur.
And you know what is really not looking good right now? And it is once again Temur's mana base. Just having access to no duels right now. It's so brutal. You can't play a ton of temples because you really need your mana to be untapped. So that requires a lot of pathways. And that requires a lot of guessing of what lands you're going to top deck. And, you know, if you just don't draw the right ones, it gets pretty awkward.
The pathways are nuts in decks that are splashing a color, right? Like if you're, for example, like I've been in Historic, I've been playing Selesnya Angels, which is a mono white Angels deck that plays a single green card Collected Company.
Yeah.
And in that deck, the pathways are perfect, right? Because you want exactly one green source and the rest you want to be white. So you can cast your Bishop of Wings, you can cast your Flame Angel.
Yeah.
In this situation where you've got double blue cards, double red cards, you've got green cards you want to cast on turn one. It's such a nightmare trying to thread that needle, especially when your dual lands aren't really actually dual lands once you play them.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And man, that Historic deck is scary. The first time my opponent went Soul Warden into Bishop of Wings into Valkyrie, I was like, oh my God, I'm dead. This game is over. All right, now we actually see the Valky Stomp. I swear I was joking when we said that before, but
yeah, this is not all the all the nerds around the world who's watching. I'm going to learn something this weekend. Yep, okay, I'm going to take notes. Sitting there furiously scribbling into their notebooks. Okay, Valky Stomp, key interaction of this matchup. No, rub it out. Tear the page out. Put it in the paper shredder because that's not a key makeup, a key part of this. I
don't know. It just happened, Riley. So I would think that it does seem like a key aspect of it, but you know, you're the expert once again, so I won't judge you on this. But
thank you very much, Corey, deferring to me as the expert in this in this commentator pair. That's true.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ooh, big draw there. Big draw there. Now we know about Brazen Borrower, so this Gargaroth is not like a slam dunk, but what we've been seeing from this game is just draw go. There's been mana problems on both sides, which is actually allowing Marcio to get back into this game where it looked awful a couple of turns ago. Yeah. But this is definitely a game now.
So here's Eliminate to get rid of the Bone Crusher Giant. Dings Paulo for 2, but that's okay. He's not under too much pressure here.
But the pressure is about to come down. Now we're really going to see the power of Klothys. We have this dispute to back this up, and it is just going to make it so these draw-go games can't happen because it will favor Marcio. Paulo will have to do something. And one thing we see in Magic in these kind of situations, it's usually the person who blinks first that kind of loses these situations. And what I mean by blinking first, the person who just starts pushing in their threats first when both players are playing counter spells usually is the one who loses because you counter that spell and then the next turn you play your big spell when, let's say, Paulo is tapped out, and that leads to the dynamic shift that puts Marcio ahead. So Klothys is really going to be excellent here.
And you can see here Paulo really taking his time to think about it.
Yep, and the disputes
face up. He's going to let it resolve, and he knows that Marcio can defend it. So ultimately, doesn't want to burn his dispute to get rid of Marcio's. What do you think of that? I mean, I think either line is defensible, right?
Yeah, either line's defensible here, and I can't really tell if that second dispute is known information as well. If that's known information, then it's just like, this has to resolve.
Yeah, they're both known.
Okay, perfect.
You can see from Paulo's perspective, the entire hand is revealed.
Oh, yep, even better. I was focused on the top half to see that. But yeah, I mean, regardless, it's just really rough right now of how do you force it through. And look at this. That is an interesting decision here that's pretty brutal. Paulo played that pathway as a blue land. That means Emergent Ultimatum will cost 8 mana, but Paulo is just saying, you know what? I'm going to cast this Ultimatum on turn 8 anyways when I can back it up with a dispute. So interesting line there I wanted to bring to attention.
I guess, Paulo is probably not going to be in a position where he can just, tap 7 lands. Tap all of his 7 lands and play Emergent Ultimatum. He is going to wait to have that 8th land to try to defend it with the dispute.
Here we go. This is what I was hoping to see here from Marcio's side. We're seeing the very rare mode of exiling a land instead of something else to get this mana. This unlocks Goldspan Dragon with protection from a dispute into Paulo's only 1 blue mana. Gets that treasure again. I guess you can't really attack into it right now, but it still just gets... Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Excuse me. You can attack and Brazen Borrower to bounce it here. And this is a huge tempo swing. in favor of Marcio.
Yeah, this is pretty bonkers here. As we see a treasure come down, that makes 2 mana, and immediately we're going to see Brazen Borrower bounce the Elder Gargaroth. It's a tale as old as time.
Yep. Sorry,
Elder
I got
Gargaroth.
excited there. That was that's such a sweet play. Goldspan Dragon into being able to defend it is so powerful.
Well, Elder Gargaroth most of the time reads 3 green, 6/6 reach, trample, vigilance, Goldspan. Like it's either put Elder Gargaroth in. Your opponent taps 2 lands. Put Elder Gargaroth into your graveyard or back in your hand. Yeah. Like that's just what the card does. So much of the time, it's a tragedy.
It's really so true. And honestly, though, the one matchup where that doesn't happen is against mono red and mono white, and that's what Gargaroth is for. So it's interesting to me that we even have it in these Temur matchups because it's not great. But oh my!
Look at this! Wow, Alrund's Epiphany now just Paulo drawing actual perfect there with a swamp.
God.
This allows the Emergent Ultimatum to be cast. We said that he wasn't going to be able to do it without 8 lands, and those 8 lands have lined up perfectly. Carvalho now in a position, sure, he got the Goldspan Dragon down, he got it across, he got it to connect, he got the treasure token, he got the Elder Gargaroth out of the way, but now this Emergent Ultimatum is just going to mean that Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa can start to turn the corner. Look at this, it's going to be huge.
This is going to be super huge. There's nothing worse than your opponent casting Emergent Ultimatum and you have a Mystical Dispute in your hand. It leads you to believe that maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And
how could this happen to me?
How did I get here? Yeah, and he even raised the dispute like maybe I made a huge mistake here because Marcio just did kind of what I was saying earlier. Whoever blinks first usually gets really punished. Marcio was blinking there with that Brazen Borrower attack. And now we see this huge swing here.
Now, no Valky, of course. That's already been cast. It's in PV's bin, so can't get that. But can get Elder Gargaroth in addition to Kiorabes the Sea God and Alrund's Epiphany. Now, traditionally, you don't give them the Time Walk. Usually, that's the one that you shuffle back away. We'll see if Marcio Carvalho follows that established wisdom, or if he's got a plan to beat another Time Walk and give PV 3 turns in a row, which is never a good position to be in.
I think if you're playing against Paulo, you should get extra turns just by default because he's so good. You know,
like as a handicap type thing.
As a handicap, exactly. Right. So when Paulo gets those extra turns, it's just really unfair. And you called it, like, just can't give them Alrund's Epiphany here. The only time I think I do, give them Alrund's Epiphany is when I just think they have absolutely nothing left in their hand and I cannot beat the cards that they just played. But that not being the case here, and Paulo, with Marcio knowing that Paulo has Elder Gargaroth, there's still gas in the tank. So it's pretty rough to give him all runs. And then bang, just packs it up.
That's it. And the other thing was, all of the creatures there are just so threatening. Even little 1/1s with their ability to hold back the dragon.